It is a great pleasure to be here today. Before I begin, I want to thank the organizers of Typographics 2016 for the invitation, and especially Roger. I'm going to be sharing with you about how we design publication experience, but most of what I know, I learned in the beginning of my career in working with Roger. First, in collaborating in a couple of projects, and then in a studio that we had as partners together. I want to also thank the Mexican Cultural Institute for their sponsorship of being here. I believe Roberto Campos might be around here in the audience. And I'm going to be showing the work of my studio, Danilo Design Group, and we are based in Monterrey, Mexico, and Mexico City. We have two studios, and very soon we're going to be reopening the New York studio. We've during the last 25 years, I've been part of a studio and working with over 200 companies in publications, newspaper, magazines. So I've had the opportunity to work in over 200 media projects, and in Mexico in particular, working with the leading brands of media. And this couldn't be possible without working with great talent. Danilo Design has a great group of designers, art directors, consultants, and among them some of the brightest designers like Gustavo Bellman, Emilio Dehesa, Santiago Orozco, some of the leading young talents that are coming out of Mexico are part of our design studio. But just to give you a brief background of how I started working with type, back in 1987, I designed my first typeface using Fontographer 1. I was working at the local newspaper as an art director, and we did a redesign, so we needed a typeface for the different section logos and section names. So I took Rockwell and did some adjustments to Rockwell Black, and we came up with Norwell. Then I did some commercial typefaces in '89. Then started working with Roger and got involved with the Font Bureau. We started commissioning projects for developing new typefaces for these publication designs. For Reforma in Mexico City, one of the, if not the leading newspaper in Mexico, when it was launched in 1993, we developed a whole set of families, even for the text, for the body text we developed in collaboration with the Font Bureau, commissioned Synergia as one of the main families. And later on, for Letras Libres, one of the leading intellectual magazines in Mexico, at its launch, we were invited to design the whole concept for the magazine. So we went out to research, and we found that the works of Enrico Martinez, who was an engineer and the first printed to be recorded in history in the Americas, we found some facsimiles of his alphabets. So in collaboration, again, with the Font Bureau and David Berlow, we selected some of the key characters of the works of Enrico Martinez, and then developed a basic full set of styles for Letras Old Style. We did the text type as well as the display type. And then later on that became Letras Old Style, which is in the retail library of the Font Bureau. Later on in 2002, while I was redesigning El Universal in Mexico City, I collaborated with Cyrus Highsmith, and we developed a, a new typeface for this newspaper. We started with a text face, Zocalo text, and then worked throughout the range up to display, and it's also now available at the Phone Bureau Retail Library. And recently, in 2012, I worked with, I commissioned Christian Schwartz to make some adjustments for the design of a new daily, Reporte Indigo. We wanted to use, we were using Stag as the main headline face, and we wanted to use it at the text sizes. But the weights that were available didn't quite fit for legibility and character count. So working with Christian, we got some of these adjustments done so that we could have the stack text implemented. But little by little, the budgets for developing new fonts has been shorter and shorter. Media is struggling right now, as most of you know. The media industry is one of the most disrupted by technology, and its business model is pretty much fractured. While media is downsizing design, most other industries are investing in innovation through design thinking methods. So we think that still design is the answer for media. Media should focus more and invest more in design, and few things contribute to an integrated branding among all the media channels as typography does, and that's part of the basis of this talk today. So I'm gonna give you our 3 keys for designing a publication experience. These are 3 keys. Of course, our methodology is much more robust, and there's much more that I could talk about. But choosing these 3 keys is sort of the core aspects of developing a brand experience for media. So number 1 is design for a brand experience across platforms. We think that type is 80% of the design experience. When we design a publication experience, we are really designing a design system that has its spine in typography, and the rest happens around it. Recently, we did the redesign of Today in Singapore. Today is a tabloid, a free tabloid in Singapore that publishes about 400,000 copies a day. And we redesigned the print edition and the online and the iPad and the mobile. So typography is the main element that builds the brand experience. If you take out the logo, typography is really the only element that sustains the identity throughout the different platforms. When we redesign Today, we strive for a clear and solid layering of information. The design had a very clear page organization, and we used a high contrast between the different styles of and typefaces. We carried this very straightforward design through the different sections of the paper. And when we had to take this to digital, we started, of course, with typography. We made sure that the user would feel no disruption from what he saw on print than what he saw on the screen. So he felt within the same media space. So we translated all design elements from print into the web. And we wanted to make sure that the concept every element, both how the story goes in the printed page and how the story goes along with other micro formats or smaller formats behave on screen, were still the very same brand personality and brand voice. The same with the iPad edition. We took some elements of the print cover, like the mosaic that we use for the callouts on the cover, and we used it as the main navigation element on the homepage of the tablet app. We carried the distinct typographic combinations to the story levels of the application. So the identity changing from one platform to another is pretty seamless. And we emphasize the different content types with subtle changes in headlines and byline styles, but still keeping within the same typographic range and different type families. So as we were designing for each platform, we distinguished type to be the constant identity element across platform versus other design elements that were platform specific. So this is sort of the criteria or the rationale that we use when taking one print concept and taking it to digital. This is a simplified version of how we define typography for a cross-platform project. The list is much longer, but you get the idea. We decide type and its usage in this order. We start with a clear definition of the grid as the organization of the space, both on print and on screen. And then working to define all the applications of type. We do it in this order, but it is really a holistic approach. We go back and forth. You can see some of the equivalence we define between the two platforms, but some of the choices have to be worked in with very specifics for print and very specifics for a screen. So you can tell that text type, it's pretty much the same. The grid, we try to do the same concept of the grid and print then on the screen, and for the display type, we think that's sort of the text type and the display type become the core elements for the identity across platforms. But then in print, decorative, microformat, and tabular fonts get translated into some other application for navigation, links, and different formats of forms on the web. Second key is make type both the voice and the personality of the brand. Roger was mentioning something at the starting of the day, how typography is it gives this to publications. It is the voice, and it is also the personality at the same time. So choosing type for designing a publication is the foremost fundamental skill for any publication designer. And before choosing type, we make sure that we are clear about what we are trying to convey. So we keep a certain focus when choosing typefaces for our projects. Because the type we choose establishes both the voice and the personality of the brand. Type is the tone, style, and focus of content. In other words, type is the UX in print. So if we are designing a newspaper, we want a typeface to be able to be as pragmatic as possible for conveying information or news, but we want it also to convey some feelings or be able to play on the page in a way that it really touches emotions in the reader. So type is the voice of a daily newspaper. Type helps inform or convey feelings when telling a story. It also can entertain. In a magazine, It's the voice of the magazine, and it allows for certain behaviors or moods within different stories. And on the web, of course, it's the voice of the website, so that the brand reconnects with the user, or the user reconnects with the brand. Type is brand personality. We say that choosing type is also key to keeping a market focus. Who is our reader? Who is our main user? So when designing a publication, we make sure that type gives the publication its personality, and it connects the brand to the right market. So if we are designing a publication and want it to be sophisticated, we make sure that we choose typefaces that give it that look and personality. Like for instance, this free paper from Mexico City, we wanted to make it look urban, so we choose a strong urban look through choosing the typefaces that will convey that personality. Or if we are designing a pop gossip magazine, again, we want the type to be noisy, to be loud, and to be playful. So we choose type for that. Or if we are designing a mobile experience, we make sure that for a magazine that's going to be read in mobile, that we push for to produce an engaging experience in a small screen. Or if it is an immersive experience, we also choose type to be conveying that type of functionality. So type is the framework for design, basically. And how we choose type, it becomes the key for that framework. So we have 5 different ways of choosing type, and I'm just going to go real quick through the different types of typographic palettes that we typically apply. We start with a very simple one typeface, many styles. Sometimes when there's low budget or it's a very small magazine or publication, we go with a very simple, straightforward type palette. Then there's what we call the trending palette, which has many typefaces with a single style for each typeface. And that is more for a diverse type of content or more trendy publication. A branded type of palette is a simple palette that extends from the brand's typography. So if the logo is using a very noticeable style or typeface, we carry that throughout the publication. Or we sometimes would do what we call a progressive typographic palette, which basically we make sure that there is a consistent anatomy in all the different styles and typefaces that we're using in a progressive form and personality, so that if you put them all together, there's a consistent anatomy in it. Or the other way of doing it also is by type designer. We choose different typefaces from one type designer. So we make sure that all the forms and the philosophy behind the design of each of these typefaces is the same. It comes from the same mind, so to speak. So one designer and various typefaces. And the third key is make the most compelling experience out of every platform. So if we are designing for print, we really get the most out of print. If we are designing for digital, we do the same. And let me show you real quick three projects. I'm running out of time, but just gonna go real quick in the different type choices that we did. And for El Imparcial, this is a daily newspaper in the northern part of Mexico. We developed a robust personality through type. And we wanted to have a typographic palette that would have this very strong and stylish at the same time personality to convey. So this is the cover of El Imparcial, and as you can notice, type is really pointing out at very specific directions for the reader to go. We started to play with things like putting the summary on top of the headline as opposed to what is typically done. And you can feel the different textures of type throughout this cover, letting the photo do its work, but the typography itself is conveying a strong voice and a strong texture. We combine that with different small elements on top of the page, enabling the user to navigate through different levels or layers of information and content. And of course, we wanted a type to be the rhythm and the mood setter for the whole publication. So for the section logos, we make sure that we had a very strong differences between the different types of content and the different typefaces that we were using for these logos. This is a closer look at the different ways that typography is working from the very straightforward news and information conveying to the smaller and much more textury ways of using type. Mi Selección is a magazine we designed for the Mexico soccer team, and we wanted to find the market's own voice in type. So we treated type more as a form rather than character. So we strive for strong forms in our typographic palette, so that the energy of the game and the strong information and stories that were being published could enable the visual narrative to be intense and to be dynamic, and at the same time to provide a wide range of typographic voice. And so we play with type as form, type as a character, and since the magazine has this very fresh-looking art direction, we wanted typography to also add to it, and always in every page be signaling some type of aesthetic voice. So here's a closer look to the different formats and elements of this magazine. Capital Mexico it's a newspaper, a financial newspaper, and we wanted to strive for typographical tension. What I mean by that is give it a strong yet quiet voice. This is a financial newspaper, so we wanted to have both a very authoritative, but also a very newsy, straightforward type palette. So we did this combination that enables these very interesting type textures along the different pages. And as you can see, you have the headline, you have the summary, and then you have three different sub-summaries at the bottom of the summary. So it develops like a cascading set of styles, very different. We go from the Brunel to the Benton compressed. So it's a very strong change. We wanted to create that type of tension between the different styles of type that we were putting together, because we wanted for the financial information to have distinct tones and voices and details, like this italic running on top of the headline, or again the compressed after the Brunel, doing this type of rhythm that would actually make it very, very fast-paced. When we took this to the web, we translated all of these styles and the same typographic palette into a web format. This is actually hasn't come out yet, but it's being developed as we speak. The design is finished, but it's in coding right now. And also for the mobile, we also kept the same rhythm, just making some adjustments in sizes to make it more comfortable for the smaller screen. Estadio is a sports daily, and this is the last project I'll show, where we wanted to capture the energy of the sport. We used Benton Sands as the main headline face, along with other very display types, and we used the stack test as well, because this is a publication that shares content with the other publication that I just showed. So we took, in Mexico, there's this very recognizable forms from the Mexico Olympic logo. So we took that and we wanted to take that inspiration and take it into Estadio for all the elements in the identity of the publication. And again, doing a very strong, very energetic contrast in the typographic palette and much more visual than a regular newspaper. And we wanted to give these display touches with these typefaces and keep it just very fun to read, very dynamic. And we work the typography at our levels with very a lot of detail from the section logos to the sidebars with the icons of the teams, soccer teams, the bylines, and some snippets, etc. We took this also to the web, and we were able to implement the same level of texture and range in type. And we believe that we accomplished, taking the same brand space from the print to the web and to mobile. And you can look at the story level in the website, keeping the same rhythm, keeping the same feel and look from the print edition, as well as on the mobile. So to wrap up, I will leave you with 3 takes. So in designing the publication experience, we say that everything starts and ends with typography. Typography organizes content, brings coherence to the visual narrative, and most important, it builds brand equity. And last but not least, when designing for print, we focus on typography to build the brand. And when designing for screen, type focuses in making the experience intuitive and fluid. Thank you.